Thank you for being my glorious comrade in this conversation.
Happy to help. Sorry, I didn't do any pre-contact.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, I finished my own presentation at 3 a.m. last night. So Ben recommends that you record on your end if it's something you're capable of doing. We have the cloud recording, but just in case you want to back up, you might.
I'm glad that Ben told me, because I literally just got this computer anyways. Okay, yeah. I'm running Audacity just in case.
Excellent. Welcome. We have our first attendee in the room.
Glorious.
Hi, Katrina.
Hello. I'll be looking at the chat as well. I still have about 2 minutes to prepare. Oh, I don't even know how to start with this. No, it's kind of interesting because all this experience was really weird. I'll wait until like 30 or something until some people pop in.
Yeah, I'll give you a brief introduction.
Yeah, sure. No, it's kind of weird because here it's as soon as one panel goes slightly late, then people just jump in and it all adds up. It's all fine.
Yeah, my last panel I had to jump in and give some time warnings to make sure we finished on time, because there's not a lot of buffer time in between these sessions.
Yeah, Zoom makes everything difficult, but then again, Zoom also makes sure that people like me can participate in an event held in the United States.
Yep. We got a starting question for you there. How's your arm?
Oh yeah, sure. Because first of all, look at my hat. Secondly, here you go. I'm out of my cast. However, my joint is really swollen since I haven't used it, and I can move it like only about this. Otherwise, it really hurts, and I'm on massive amounts of painkillers right now. No, because I managed to get my arm broken after Ukraine. It was just silly, but it's fine. Okay, we have 1 minute still.
Yeah. We'll give people an extra 60 seconds or so after the start time, just so people can trickle in.
I'll start slow. It's fine.
It's about 31 after, so I'll give you your introduction.
Yeah, sure. This makes me worried. And if I think about it, it's kind of silly being worried. Talking with friendly people at a conference makes me more worried than when I was in the actual war zone. Kind of silly.
Just pretend it's a podcast and forget that you can't fix anything in post.
No, I'll be fine. I'll be fine.
All right, give another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll get going. All right. Yes. So welcome everyone to the second full session of Intelligent Speech. My name is David Montgomery. I'm the host of the Siècle podcast covering 19th century French history, also a journalist based here in Minneapolis. And our lovely speaker here today is going to talk about wartime podcasts. Without further ado, take it away, Kristaps.
Well, hi everyone, and hi David. It's really nice to have someone of the same trade, so to speak, over here, because being a journalist and being a podcaster shifts over sometimes. For me, it shifts over almost constantly. First of all, I also have to apologize for the camera because I literally got a new computer for this one. Last one broke down and sort of died after Ukraine. And as you can see, war podcasting is a bit different, and I'm quite qualified to talk about this, as you can see from my hat, because I've spent some time in Ukraine, about 2 weeks, and I had been there previously as well. And there's a lot of difference. And what I wanted to talk about is, why is this important? And why, if you're thinking about doing a podcast, or why if you want to make a podcast, or if you are listening in and want to hear war stories and everything, why you should search out for media that's over there and mostly independent. The difference here is that I understood that these people over there in kind of the trenches, so to speak, these guys are a massive audience for podcasts. Because if you are a Ukrainian soldier in the trenches over there, you don't have time to look at YouTube. That's why it's too much battery. But apparently, when I recommended a bunch of podcasts to the people who were soldiers, they were super happy about it. So there's another issue here. But the whole podcasting thing at war itself turns into a major issue. I've spoken about this before, but you kind of have to be ready to bribe things, and a lot of people have asked bribe things and do a lot of weird stuff, and then you're also sometimes in danger because obviously. But the whole attitude changes. The whole attitude changes towards everything, and I believe that podcasting from war is kind of also the safest way how to do it, because sometimes you just need to get the word out. We all make podcasts because we want to spread the message somehow. We have some things to say. I believe that the most important part for every podcaster is to basically, you don't need to make a podcast if you don't have anything to say right now. And as I make a podcast about Eastern European politics and Soviet history, then, well, people laughed at me when I told them that in my state, when I was learning about everything, that if a war breaks out, then I'll have a plan for it. And guess what? Some people were actually super surprised when I did. And then I thought that, being a bit weird Latvian as I am, I thought it would be just natural if I would go to Ukraine myself and focus on my work there. It's kind of weird when you have to record your episodes if when you're staying in the only hotel available for the press, and when the air raid sirens come on. But a person can really achieve a lot and get used to everything, really. Wartime podcasting is something that you should also kind of learn about and do, since, well, other people, and as this war is basically the first war, major war at least, that's not just recorded, it's live streamed, if you think about it. They always tried to say that the revolution will not be televised. Well, apparently these guys were false. This war sort of might lead to some revolutions everywhere because of the food crisis. It's upcoming. We have an episode on that on the Eastern Border Show. But as we're live streaming this, yeah, we've heard a lot of stories, and we've seen a lot of people who are basically filming from their own area, and the kind of the location, the background when they talk about something gives away the position of the military troops that you're doing work with, that you're trying to bring the messages in. So it's kind of a weird situation. You can be close up and you can report live as it happens. Well, unless it's a blog post, or you're sitting waiting for Zelensky and the Baltic presidents to meet, and then you're surrounded by guys with guns who try to look at you strangely. But podcasts kind of make it better in a weird way. I know that, for example, Arestovich himself and everyone around there, they're kind of trying to think about podcasting as a media for crisis events, because there are times where podcasts allow you to spread the message as soon as it happens very quickly, but don't really reveal the position of your troops. So it's much harder to hit the unit that you've been interviewing with a rocket than it is if these guys are filmed. That's a weird issue. But I after this I checked, and I was quite stunned that apparently I was the only podcaster that actually was crazy enough to actually go and visit there. The worst part about all this situation is that you have to have checks and balances and everything, and all the paperwork needs to be done, and it's hard work. It takes a lot of kind of mental stress, because, like I always say, you don't go to a crisis zone if you're not if you have a couple of hours only in a day with which you work. Kind of shifts your mood completely. But the challenges with being a podcaster in general in Eastern Europe have their own special take, because unlike in the United States, podcasting is just right now reaching some apex. So every time I had to go and do an interview with someone in Ukraine, every time you have to explain what a podcast even is, that's a bit difficult. And now I'll try to share my screen with you and show you some pictures of stuff, because I'm not sure how many of you here want to do your podcast. Please, if you want, you can just write in the real time over there. And I'm sorry for being a bit weird, since sure. I apologize for being a bit slow right now. It's just that we got hit by a heat wave, and I was in the countryside, and my whole room is basically now kind of like a car that has been sitting in the sun for a huge while. But I got this hat from Arestovich, so that's kind of weird. Okay, let me check now. Oh no, wait, this is a different computer. Oh well. Another issue just what's happened right now is that a lot of people who do podcasts in general and try to act weirdly is that everyone has super prepared for everything. Like I did for this episode, but then I forgot I had actually acquired the new computer for this whole thing. Turns out that risky situations can happen. And well, I had been to Donbass before and everything seems super safe. But overnight, after, you know, 2 times, basically, I almost got exploded. That wasn't fun. You kind of start to accept all this reality. That's the weirdest part about this whole situation. I know a lot of people, and specifically podcasters, and if you make any content whatsoever, and journalists as well, we like to plan our articles. We like to plan ahead what we're going to talk about. We like to organize everything by the minute, basically. But sometimes you just can't do it, and specifically when suddenly the power goes out and your laptop that you've taken to the war zone turns out doesn't have enough battery left in it to keep recording. Sometimes that happens too, and then you get to improvise a bit. Editor, by the way, hated me a lot for all the work that I did over there, because she was super nervous for everything. But the main takeaway is, well, war podcasting matters because people listen to it. It's a very efficient way how to do it. And sadly, a lot of people in positions of power, and a lot of people in general, have no idea what this is, at least in Eastern Europe. But this is kind of increasing in whole popularity. Meanwhile, it's kind of hard to get taken seriously. However, recording in whole situation is I really don't. Sorry about the confusion here. And if you want to interview someone as a podcaster, then you have to get super special permits. This was the first time when I went there and I saw people literally looking up and Googling my podcast as I was talking to them, because they didn't really understand what this was. And the biggest issue with the whole going to a war zone, because people didn't know what a podcast was when we entered Ukraine from Moldova via bus on the very southern border of Moldova and Ukraine, because we didn't go through Transnistria. And we were only 2 people, like me and the guy who took some pictures, my aide over there. We were the only non-Ukrainians on the whole bus. Everyone else was just women and people, just women with kids, mostly young kids, and elderly people. Everyone was there, and they just went there to Odessa to grab some stuff for them, basically. Just, because the buses finally started going again. And we hadn't really advertised ourselves as much as journalists as we were entering there. But turns out that we probably should have. Since on the border, our bags were completely checked. We were forced to undress and underwent a complete scan. And then people tried to kind of question me about what do I make? What content do I make? Because a lot of pro-Russian, kind of pro-Putin sent in journalists, and I want to put an air quotes on that one, also had tried to enter Ukraine at this point. And these people in the southwestern region of Ukraine hadn't seen neither any journalists nor anyone from the Baltics even trying to get in there. So when you're under duress and when you're basically undressed completely, when all of your bags have been taken out, then there was a nice little question about, can you please show us what are you doing? So of course we had to pull out our laptops because all of our equipment was confiscated. And that was the first time ever when I have played a podcast live in a border control post with the whole bus, and the bus driver probably hating me, and the whole bus staring at me as if I was some sort of a murder criminal. It all ended up with us staying there on the border for about an hour. We had to call our embassy to get us through. So that's the bad part. The good part, however, was that a lot of mainstream media, turns out that a lot of people who are just from bigger channels and everything, yeah, let me tell you a bit of a secret here. They get taken to tours. There are specific tours organized by the government to various places, and you get taken to a lot of sanitized version. Being a podcaster in a war zone or in any conflict, really, because I intend to go to other conflict situations, the biggest benefit is that you get to talk with people and they don't treat you as if you were a journalist. It seems a bit strange, but if you think about it, whenever a politician talks to someone that he knows, like from BBC or CNN or something like that, they always have these prepared statements. They don't see the human in you. They only see the kind of the image that you want to create, the professionalism, the kind of the brand. They don't talk to you as a journalist. They talk to you as a representative of BBC, and you've been told by your superiors and everyone what's the right thing to say to the BBC. But if you go there and you kind of get accredited, that took a lot of time. But again, thanks to the embassy. Then if you're alone there and you start doing the podcast thing, then it allows you to just get the human touch and get into tiny little nudges in between. I mean, in broad terms, I don't think that indie journalists like myself, and if you're a podcaster or just a small YouTube channel, it's not really that worth of if you're over there on the spot to cover the big events, which will be explained to the whole BBC's, Reuters, and all these places by the government there. But you get to do the whole human story. You get to see the whole human perspective there, because people try to talk to you as just a human being, and it is really, really weird. And another thing, I'm a bit sorry, just again, when I think about all the situation, that still isn't very psychologically healthy for me. But the human stories and these whole things matter, since if you've read the whole BBC news, and again, I just use BBC because I stayed like one room across from them in a hotel, and they were always there all the time. The thing is that they present you the facts and the big stuff. But as I was inspired by Dan Carlin to make this show and everything, I've always tried to show the human side of this. I remember that Dan Carlin always mentioned this, how it's like to fight an elephant with a spear stuff, when he spoke about the Punic Wars. And I try to portray this part of this, because as I've seen right now in a lot of kind of more Western media, everyone else in the West basically forgets about this stuff, while here in Eastern Europe, the Ukraine war is the number one most important thing happening right now. And if you just read the news and you don't get the people's stories out there, if you don't get the perspectives, it's easy to just start looking at this thing as if it would be just numbers. It doesn't become personal. And if you want to basically make sure that other people on the planet Earth don't kind of forget about your issues, and you kind of want to make sure that they know why they should care about this stuff, that the people's stories are the most important part, as I've noticed. Because it's one thing to read kind of a short snippet of the interview from a professional journalist on a huge newspaper stuff, and read that one, and that's probably been edited and a bit sanitized. And it's a whole another thing when you've been there and you've been talking to people like human beings, and then they tell you the kind of the reality, the grim reality of their stuff. And if you care enough, then yeah, if you want to cover a conflict that matters to you a lot, then I think that a lot of people should just cover these important human aspects of this. Because I'm writing a book about all the situation because it all struck me super personally, something of that sort. But the weirdest part, of course, is that I was very worried when I actually transferred this whole Eastern Border show from my usual kind of one episode per month on this news stuff and 3 episodes per month on historical stuff, and everything was super scripted. I actually thought people would get super angry at me, that people would maybe unsubscribe for the show or stop listening. But so far, everyone's been super supportive and super nice, and kind of been helpful with all the things that I've been doing. So there's a whole niche again that needs to be filled, because when I read these kind of dry numbers, that doesn't really mean much. And you would think that more stuff on ground would happen, more stuff explaining directly people's stories once again. But yeah, didn't find a lot of things. Yeah, Katrina Meyer is asking a question about, do I know anyone else doing something similar in Ukraine or other conflict area? There's Anthony Barthaway, but I think he's been in Ukraine for a long time, and he's been doing a Ukraine podcast for a long period, but he's not really going to the conflict zones. He's pretty much in safety. Other conflict areas, really don't know. Mostly, see, that's the thing. It kind of takes a special, bit insane person who has to be in the right place to go to such dangerous areas. Doing something similar to other conflicts, well, uh, I know that kind of one of the people that I worked with over here, it was like a while ago, but there was a Russian yeah, thank you, a Russian journalist that died in Central African Republic. I was about to. He was a war correspondent, and I was about to kind of interview him as he was going to there. Since well, right now again everything ties together because if you know the Wagner Group, I've been making episodes about them, but they're now fighting in Ukraine. They previously fought in Syria, in Libya, and Central African Republic. And yeah, from Echo Moscow, the journalist just offered that he would go there with as few people as possible because you don't want a large team there. And Wagner Group shot him dead. Yeah, kind of weird. That's another most bizarre aspect of this whole war journalism thing. I've lost in this whole Ukraine conflict 5 people in total that I knew personally, which is a bit bizarre. Maybe that's why it's also kind of hard to talk to you a bit in an unscripted manner, so to speak, because yeah, at one point you understand that you kind of have to put away your emotional part and everything that you want to actually kind of put on. I tried to actually make this whole presentation to inspire some more people to go there, since yeah, you can pretty much manage. The whole attitude to this situation is that the war, the whole situation when everything is not very orderly and not very nice, except the block post and all the whole areas things, is that you can hitchhike be an APC basically. It's quite easy. If you really try hard, you can hitchhike a helicopter as well. However, at the same time, Black Sea was a military object, and when we went close to that one, oh boy, that didn't end up well. My camera guy was just smacked down and was laid completely on the ground, and then we got into a bit of interrogation. But I just understood that people are just friendlier there, and that's kind of an interesting thing, since, well, if you people in the Western countries, I presume most of you are from Western countries, here are basically, if you've heard a lot of criticisms over the media, turns out that well, podcasters can get more info in this whole situation. But about the danger part, well, yeah, the biggest issue with all this situation is that I'm super thankful to all of my listeners because, hey, you know what? It's Patreon people who support me that basically funded my whole Ukraine trip, because ad revenue isn't really high with my hosts. So I was super happy about this. And when the big media funds your trip and everything, then they can ask what the show and what's up. When you're funding everything yourself, just because of your listeners, whole attitude is a bit different. And then again, at the moment when you sit in Odessa train station and kind of underground, because the train station has been basically called in by a bomb threat since 2 days ago, a rocket hit another train station, then you kind of start to worry about all this situation. It takes a certain bizarre mindset, but hey, I presume that conflict situations, sadly, and then we get to the depressing part of all the situation, conflict situations in the world are going to improve. Oh, sorry, they're going to increase. And it's going to be pretty bad with all the food crisis. I made an episode about this with some experts, but we're going to see more conflict situations, and it's just not enough if you just inform someone by reading something, and sterilized images are not gonna cut it this time. Because if we want to solve problems for prolonged periods of time, if we want to have some permanent solutions, really have to have this in-depth understanding of kind of what people feel like and what this conflict and what everything around it means for people involved in this situation. And if we want to change something, then we kind of have to do a more empathetic look on the situation. And David is reminding me about the fact that we're close to end of time. So please raise your hand or just type in chat, and I'll be super glad to answer any questions specifically about anything really. I think David, yeah.
I'll just kick things off with a question of my own, and people can, as I said, raise your hand or type questions in the chat as you wish. To start things off, you're talking about your experience as a podcaster, and I think there's sort of two things at work there. one, sort of the fact that you're an independent journalist, you don't have the structure and the resources that the CNN or the BBC or a public or a radio station even doing news has. And then the second is the new medium of a podcast, and the connotations that podcasting has as maybe something new or less respectable or something like that. Could you sort of break down those two factors and how each of them played a role as with your doing sort of war correspondenting?
Yeah, see, about the big resources, podcasting doesn't require a lot of resources. Lack of resources was, of course, a bit difficult. It wasn't easy, but you can manage. It's not that hard if you can budget everything out. And besides, hey, it's let me be a bit honest here. It's not like you have a lot of places open to actually spend anything in Kiev, except hotels, which is pretty awful since people like to overcharge everything. But yeah, podcasting allows you to make everything more manageable, since you don't have to go in with a huge team, and then you get this personal contact with the BBC. And podcast is a new medium. Like I said, it's very useful for complex situations because, again, you can get to, if you have less equipment to carry around with you. And yeah, I had this here mic, and that's about it, since it holds in recordings. I can record stuff when I'm talking to people. I don't even need my computer. I can just click on my computer when I want to do some post stuff back in safety or in the hotel, or when I want to get data out of my microphone. And the less equipment you carry, then normally you would want to have a team. You would want to have people who are helping you out with making pictures, and some bodyguards maybe for safety and everything. But the bigger team you have, the more money you need to spend, obviously. And when it kind of boggles you down. Since I was able, when I heard rockets firing, I could just run easily to a bomb shelter, and I didn't have to worry about leaving a lot of equipment, because you're wearing a bulletproof vest and a helmet all the time. So if the more extra stuff that you carry, the more it slows you down, and you always have to remember that you can't really go to the very front lines with a huge team and get into the real situation when everything is kind of weird and people won't talk to you, because the guys that you are maybe interviewing over there, they also feel responsible for you because you're press. So they won't take you, and they won't talk to you that much, and they won't spare you as much time if you're carrying huge amounts of luggage around with you, basically. So that kind of helped. Of course, lack of proper resources was also a bit weird, but hey, manageable. And I really hope that, at least weirdly enough, I can be of use to my audience, and that's what matters to me the most. Since, like I said, this conflict has turned into a bit of a personal tragedy as well as now. But pulling through.
Your feed had been a history podcast for a long time, and then you pivoted with when the invasion started into doing more journalism. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that transition and the effect it had in your audience? Did you gain audience, lose audience, have a change in your audience as you started sort of shifting from one format to a very different format?
Well,
same topic, obviously, but
I have always been telling people that if war starts, I will switch over and I'll do war correspondence until the war is over, because from my history studies, I had always known that something like this was going to happen. It was just somewhere there in my blood. But yeah, we had a plan and we activated it. The audience, total amount of downloads has grown, but it's really difficult because right now the downloads per episode just vary immensely, and a lot of episodes are downloaded there. If you switch to these formats, I've been used to following everything because I released episodes weekly, and now I release episodes whenever I have some news to tell people, and they're of different lengths and everything. Of course, I have interviews which are more planned and everything, but yeah, that was a bit bizarre. Just hard to follow this, but so far, like I said, everyone's been super positive.
Do you know how many downloads you get from Ukraine itself?
Oh, I'm gonna have to check.
Sure.
It's on Acast, really. It's quite a lot, really, because I managed to sounds silly, but I did an interview with Dan Carlin while I was in Ukraine, so that might have played kind of a big kind of a thing there. But it was interesting. That was one of the major kind of difficulties here, because a lot of people, also when you're there, a lot of people send you ridiculous amounts of questions and everything, and a lot of these questions are very similar. So sifting out through all of this gets a bit weird, because we podcasters, we get a lot of response emails to our episodes, and then you have time to do that. But when you have to really focus your attention on making good news and working hard, then it gets less possible to answer everything and even read through all the emails, which is a bit weird, obviously.
As a reminder, raise your hand, or if you want to ask a question, or just type it in the chat, either one. So can you talk a little bit about how your history background has informed your journalism? Having had a deep background in the historical aspects, how did that let you cover this war in a way that someone without that background, someone who was familiar with journalism but not with the area's history, how can you cover that in a way that someone else wouldn't?
Well, the trick here is that I speak Russian, which is good, and I know the culture there in Ukraine, and it allows me to kind of understand people. I don't make silly mistakes, and I don't compare stuff, because if you know the culture, then you can more easily connect with people, and then people want to talk to you more. Then they're really ready to reveal themselves more and be more open about their feelings and everything, which is an important part of this. But my history studies just led me to this podcast in general, because I also did a lot of politics research, but history and politics and all this stuff just helps you fit together all this. It's kind of a tool set, really. Oh, and we have a question. Is there any part of the Soviet Russian history that the war has made you more interested in? Yes, the thing that I had to research a lot, because I was asked to write some articles on paper as well. The whole Taras Shevchenko thing, the whole Ukrainian nationalism stuff. Oh, and this ties into that one, because Stephen May asked, I had the article in Foreign Policy where I translated Putin's speech. How did that came about? That came about as I was watching Putin give his speech live. And then turns out that guys from Foreign Policy, who, by the way, I stumbled upon really, they just messaged me and said, hey, our translators are working on this stuff. And well, it makes no sense. You know Russian, you know the culture. Could you please maybe translate this? Because our guys probably are doing something wrong. The speech is just basically non sequitur. It is nothing in relation to the whole situation and Donbas region or anything like that. And then they told me, hey, you have time until 6 a.m. in the morning. The speech started at 10 a.m. So at that point, I was like, okay, then. And then I tried to live translate everything to English and then write an article about it. And then I understood that, oh, no, these guys weren't wrong. The speech is gibberish, and it's hard to put it into weird things, because at some points what Putin states is not even wrong. And I had to double check on that one, because I really want to go back and figure out the early 16th, 17th century Ukraine stuff, which isn't my specialty. But yeah, all this has basically shifted around this, because this is also how I slept through the beginning of the war, because again, I was translating Putin's speech. I was putting on his historical arguments, because again, historical knowledge, to answer David's first thing, was that a lot of people these days like to use history in the argument for their politics. And mostly it's been done wrongly, because they use a version of history which omits facts and everything. So, if they're going to use history in their argumentation and you want to oppose them and you want to kind of argue with something, you kind of have to really know what's going on there. And war reporting, yeah, it has brought me a bit more attention from traditional media. I have another article upcoming in the Foreign Policy magazine, which is quite important, as I've heard. But they're really nice guys, about Russian liberals, about how their whole situation, Echo Moskvy and everyone that is closed now, about their shortcomings and why really was the shift away from the 90s, where everyone was pro Yeltsin and pro democracy, and how it shifted to more support of, well, Putin and the masses. So I'll do that one. And the weirdest part was that Latvian media has also noticed me, which is mostly bizarre, since in Latvia we have our own public media association, like public radio, and they have a podcasting section there now as well. And apparently, if you're a public broadcaster or public media, you have to write some reports and have basically an audit of your work done at the end of every year. So I was really happy when they basically told me that I'll be the independent auditor of our basically public radio's podcasting section, and they gave me criteria. But it's kind of really hard to evaluate other people's podcasts, because we all have different styles, we all have different attitudes towards our work, we have different ways of how we present information and how we do research, and then then you kind of have to put it all under one blanket, because I really don't know if an audit of such things and kind of objective measurement of quality has been done. But yeah, I'm going to go back to Ukraine, of course, as soon as I can manage plane stuff and I know where to go, because I wanted to go to the east, to the Donbas region again. But yeah, Severodonetsk is now being kind of abandoned by Ukrainian forces because they took a lot of casualties and they just want to retreat to more defensible position, which means that if Russians completely take over, then I won't have a place to stay there, which is bad, because I had planned that that I will be able to stay there, since I hoped that Ukrainians would make a pushback. That didn't happen, so now I have to figure this one out. Oh yeah, and this is probably going to be I don't know how many minutes I have. I guess I have
about 5 or 6 minutes left.
Okay, nice. Had to answer call. Linda, don't worry about this. This is going to be recorded, and the early parts, yeah, finally got a bit. It got slightly less hot over here since my landlord turned on the AC, but it's fine. It's all recorded anyways. Putin's end goal. I don't really think it's just Ukraine. I think that his end goal is more vague. I think that he just wants to leave a historical mark in the history books, because he kind of has to think about his legacy. Remember that Putin is also quite old. He might not look the age. I think now he does. But remember that this guy has had a lot of operations and everything, plastic operations, plastic surgeries. And Putin's goal is sort of to restore some sort of hegemony status of Russia in the region. And he just wants to look like a victorious person, someone who is the new Stalin, basically. That's why we see this glorification of Stalin in modern day Russia. He's turned from someone who kind of was effective in economy, and at the same time, a lot of purges, a lot of horrible stuff, and one of the most horrible dictators on the planet Earth, to basically a kind of historical minimization of all the bad stuff, and kind of glorification of all this. Yeah, he was a strong leader and everything like that. I think Putin wants to be seen like that, and Ukraine is kind of a tool. And also end goals. That's the problem here, since I think that he's either being fed some weird information, or that he's not as good as a long-term planner as everyone thinks he is. He's a very good operational manager. As I mentioned in one of my episodes, Putin reached about the level in the KGB, which was managing a team of about 7-8 people, like an operational level stuff. And he could basically run a small business. He's really good at this thing, because Yeltsin picked him as his successor due to the fact that he was really good at doing all these lower level management tasks. And Boris Nemtsov, which was the other candidate, was seen as a bit too ambitious for Yeltsin and everything. So Putin was picked as a safe candidate. And one of the criticisms was that he had a lack of imagination and he lacked a vision of the future. So, as scary as it might sound and weird, as he's basically swapped his advisors for yes men, and that he himself is known to not have that much ability when it comes to long-term planning, he might have just been wanting to get into history books and saw Ukraine and was told that Ukraine will be a nice, easy way how to do this, and really hadn't swapped on anything kind of more serious. And yeah, basically Putin, if you look at Putin's advisors in the year 2000 when it comes to power, and you look at them now, then it all turns out really weird. I mean, Dmitry Medvedev, who also was technically a president of Russia for a while, look at what he's doing now. Everyone's kind of applying to this. And he just really purged people so that they would be more loyal to them. I think so, at least.
One final question here to, sorry, you can go with Linda's question here, asking who Putin's successor might be.
Putin's successor, that's the problem. That's the problem with Putin. He's to strengthen his own power because of all the surrounding of yes men, to strengthen his own power and make sure he has like utter control. He's destroyed the institutions of Russia. He's weakened Gosduma. He's weakened governors, taken away their legitimacy. There's no one. If Putin dies, then there's going to be a massive legitimacy crisis. I don't see anyone truly succeeding Putin, at least not now, because, well, I believe that there's going to be uprisings and chaos in Russia if everything doesn't really go their way. someone might come into forefront and do something, but they're going to have to rebuild their legitimacy. It won't be basically Putin's successor as much as a new person who's made legitimacy for himself. Because Shoigu, the Minister of Defense, who hasn't served a single day in the army before he got assigned minister, local governors, Ramzan Kadyrov, out of all people, who's just a bizarre, weird person. Yeah, that's the problem. If there would be a clear successor to Putin, then he would probably be thinking about how to shoot Putin now to get power, because he would have a lot of favors. But Putin was figuring this one out, so he's always been trying to weaken anyone who would even see him as his successor, which is why this Putin succession thing, that's a question that's just as much like I could pick someone, and the chance of that coming true realistically would be just as me winning the jackpot in some lottery.
One final question, and we've got about a minute and a half left. A little bit of different angle here, but talk a little about mental health and how you stay safe and sane, both, with the broader existential question, living in Latvia with Russian military actions nearby, and then actually going into a war zone yourself. What are your tips for maintaining your own mental health in these stressful situations?
To be honest, I am gonna go to a therapist when this war is over. Currently, I am living day by day. I focus on what I need to do. And because I understood that if I'm going to take a lot of time and reflect on everything that's happening, I'm probably going to go down and cry for a bit or something. Right now, I'm just doing what needs to be done. And then I'm going to go to a therapist probably and figure things out. I don't know. I sometimes forget English, sorry. I have compartments in my brain where I store this stuff, and I acknowledge that, when the time comes to actually think about everything that I feel and everything, it's going to be pretty bad, but can you focus on this? And the thing that helps is all of you guys, the people who actually listen to the show and leave some good comments. If you're doing something that someone else appreciates, and that you feel that, it's not just going nowhere, that you're doing is actually a decent job, then it's easier to focus on that one, on the positive parts, and just to stay calm. It's kind of I kind of haven't really looked at the big picture yet. I've been just living day by day since the war started, which is a weird and probably traumatizing answer, but I just don't have time to focus on the sad parts. Otherwise, I'll probably be sitting on the couch right next to me and sobbing in the corner or something. But work needs to be done.
Thank you very much, Kristaps. I think thank you for all of us. I say take care of yourself and keep doing good work.
Thank you. And happiness is mandatory.
Yep. A lot of great sessions coming up next. You can also go into the chat room if you want to keep this conversation going. And everyone enjoy the rest of Intelligent Speech.